Football at 4, Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast. We have a lot to dive into. The draft is in the books, and now we want the intel on how it all happened and how it all went down. Adam Caplan, how are you, man? Back from Vegas.
I'm good, man. Yeah, I'm glad to be back. It was actually really cool being out there. I had not been to a draft, other than the one in Philly that we worked for in Philly. Jeff and I, we were able to host locally on radio. I don't think I'd been one since 2010 in Madison Square Garden. So this is really cool to be there for the 3 days. Though I was working the whole time, so I didn't really get to do a whole lot. It was very hot out. But I checked the scene out. Very cool. The NFL did a great job. It was cool being there. And the great thing about being at a draft is, especially when you don't know something's going to come, you get to be surprised. And the A.J. Brown trade, Mike, I have to give the Eagles credit and John Robinson, the GM of the Titans, and actually their coaches did not know it was going to happen. Talking to Titan source, like shortly before the trade broke, the coaches found out they didn't know it was going to happen. So it's pretty interesting. You know what with that trade and what has happened for both teams since then, and just really, it really kicked off. Like that was by far the biggest surprise of the draft. I don't think anything could touch that trade. You know, there's things that happen. There's some surprises, no doubt, but nothing like that.
So how did it give us a little bit of insight on how he makes the call, what happens there, how does it all spark? How did this get rolling?
Yeah, so they were in touch. They talked. I don't know exactly what happens is you if you run into someone at the combine, you'll talk. Like the DeMarco Murray trade that the Eagles and Titans executed in 2016. It started because it was for free agency. They started at the combine, and then in the coming days they talked and they got it done by the start of free agency. And this one, I'm going to say last week. I think they talked Monday or Tuesday. It was explained to me. It was kind of like the Eagles were not the only one to call. But what I could tell you is that the Jets were involved, according to a Titan source. The Jets were definitely involved. Now we know what they would wind up doing. They took Garrett Wilson. It's terrific. But just the Eagles were motivated. I think Roseman and Robinson have a very good relationship. Both are kind of honest with each other. But what I find fascinating, Mike, is why did it have to be done now? Why couldn't the Titans just let this? Because Brown would tell Tron Davenport, you used to work here in Philly, covering the Eagles, who covers the Titans for ESPN.com. A.J. Brown told him, look, I was willing to do a deal for $22 million, which, by the way, is below market value. It never got there. It was, $16 million plus major upside? That's not going to get it done. That's less than Christian Kirk got. I know Kirk was a free agent, but nevertheless, A.J. Brown's a way better player than Christian Kirk. So my sense is they didn't want to pay him. And I'm thinking because of his injury history, but I know for a fact, I know the Titans pretty well. They adored A.J. Brown. He was the heart and soul of their offense, not the quarterback. It's more the receiver, believe it or not. This trade made them worse, not better.
On Brown, what's his role now? What type of receiver are the Eagles getting? What does he bring to the table, and how he complements Devonta Smith?
Yeah, I got to tell you, we did our last Red Coat Cell show, which drops tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Eastern on every platform and YouTube. I'm not going to give away I'm not going to give away everything with what he said, but I got to tell you, you will be blown away with what he said about A.J. Brown. I'll just tell you what my Titan sources told me about A.J. Brown. First of all, he's a true X receiver. He's a single-side receiver. You don't move him around much. He'll draw double teams. As one Titan source said to me, he always wins. He's so strong physically. You know, he's not tall, but he's strong as hell. He's under 6'1". He gets up on you. The coaching term is he gets up on you real quick. He's not fast at all, but he runs better than you think. And he will draw double teams. He'll beat double teams. He's as explosive and as strong as he was when they drafted him in 2019. And he's an unbelievable leader, an emotional leader, and everyone from the owner to the general manager to the front office staff to the coaches to the players connected with him as soon as he was drafted in 2019. This is a special football player who Mike fans will absolutely fall in love with. I have no doubt. He doesn't hide anything. He did have dual knee surgery last year, scope. I'm told he's fine. Now, the problem is he's had problems with these knees before, so if they get sore, they may have to back off during practice during the season. In the 2020 season, they backed off every Wednesday, if I recall correctly, just to get him through the season. But he's unbelievably competitive. He is a true alpha. He will absolutely transform that room. And that room, we've been saying on Inside the Birds for a couple of years now, they badly needed a veteran, and they've got one in A.J. Brown.
They got him, and obviously you got Goddard, you've got Smith, you've got I don't know what's going to happen with Rager and Watkins and that whole situation. You've got Pascal. They've certainly upgraded their offensive weaponry just by adding this player.
No doubt. You add a major pass target. What's interesting here is if you play fantasy, I would assume A.J. Brown, because of what they're paying, contracts always tell story, will be the number one pass target. Now, here's the question. Because Devontae Smith showed for, until they really started hiding their passing game before they became a major running game, Smith's pass targets were pretty significant. Now, the head coach and the general manager made it clear they want Smith and Goddard to get more pass targets now, get A.J. Brown there. So I would think it would be A.J. Brown 1, Smith 1A-ish. Got it pretty close, though.
By the way, his over-under yardage was 909 for
Browns?
A.J. Brown. Yes, that's the Vegas number.
Interesting.
909.
That's interesting.
The Eagles haven't had a 1,000-yard receiver since 2014.
And you got to understand, last season he was doing really well, but he got hurt. He's been, look, 2 out of 3 seasons he's been pretty beat up. But I'm told he's good. I know the Eagles did their background check on the medicals. They're okay with it. But look, this is a stunner. It was kind of like the it's funny, a little different, but similar reaction. When they selected Jalen Hurts, it was a shocker. That was when I actually stared at my computer. I'm like, what the hell just happened? This one, I was like, wow. And my heart broke for my friends with the Titans because I know how much he meant to them. I don't think you could really, unless you cover the Titans or you're a fan of the Titans or you know the team really well, you don't really understand how much he meant to them. That's the greatest part about this, Mike, for the Eagles. Folks, you're listening to Mike and I, you're going to fall in love with this player. You just will not believe it. I just hope he stays on the field enough with the knee problem. I just hope he's healthy because he's a very, very special player.
All right, let's get some intel on the picks. They got 5 in all. They had 10. They went down to 5. Jordan Davis, they trade number 13 in the first round. Why is Davis there? Why did they feel the need? He was the guy to trade up for.
So we dropped our pre-draft show when we put it out there who we think are going to draft. I think we listed Davis and McDuffie as the 2 top targets, and there were 2 other players. But the reason what we were hearing is the big thing the thing that the Eagles do for the most part when they reach, it's because they're trying to think more of this year, and that's when they miss. But when they're thinking farther down the road, they seem to get it right more often than not. And the way it's explained to us was that they wanted Jordan Davis not only to replace Cox next year, but it was part of the run. The run defense for a while last year was poor. They're usually a good run defense, particularly under Jim Schwartz. And they wanted to get back to that because when you don't have a good run defense, that kind of could limit what you do. Sometimes you have to drop a safety in the box. You have to, you're going to load up a little bit more with a bigger front, which teams don't like doing that unless they have to. And plus, as a personal source with another team told me, if you're interested in Jordan Davis, you're looking at traits and size and athleticism and what you cannot find in the draft. There's nobody like him, Mike. You're not going to find anybody like him in this draft and probably future drafts. Now, are they taking a projection here? Yes. Is he there? No, he's not there. He's not even close to being there yet. I know some people have a problem with this when I said this, and a couple people were not happy with me when I said it, but I'm going to repeat it because it came from NFL people. He's a true boom or bust pick. Because they're drafting traits right now. They're not drafting a guy who's even close to the finished product. Not that anyone is, but he is farther behind than maybe some other first-round picks. Now, part of it, Mike, is his weight. Yes, the other part of it is what other people mentioned. It's fair. They blew out a lot of teams, so he didn't need to be in. But he's not shown the ability to rush the passer yet. Not that anyone will be like Fletcher Cox, not comparing him to him. But if you're going to replace Fletcher Cox, you got to be able to rush the passer at some point, and that's a work in progress. This is what Jonathan Gannon and their defensive staff have to get done. And Tracy Rocker, the D-line coach, they're over time. Again, it doesn't have to be this year because he's not going to play a ton. I know people want to know. He's not going to start, obviously, because Fletcher Cox and Hargrave will start, but it doesn't mean he can't cut into the playing time. If he's in great shape and he's kicking it, and he's ahead of schedule, heck, by all means, you got to start.
I was going to wonder what's his role in terms of whose playing time does he cut into? Is it Fletcher Cox? Is it Hargrave?
I mean, think so.
Yeah.
I would think Fletcher Cox, especially with base downs, because he's a run guy for now. And then, but again, there's so much untapped potential with him. And Cosell has some great stuff. The great thing about this show tomorrow, there was a bunch of stuff he had never said before in our show, although we talked about Davis before with him. But Greg has a framework of what he could possibly be. My understanding is there's not that type of upside in him to be a pass rusher because he hasn't shown it. But the great thing is, and he got double teamed a lot. This is another part which, if you look at his career, Mike, not a lot of people talk about it, but it's definitely true, and people should know this. Part of the reason why he didn't rush the passer as much as you would like is because he got double teamed a lot, and you're going to because he would blow the run up so well, and he got some hurries, and they're not a sack guy, but he's going to be a fun player. I look forward to seeing him in training camp, and I'm just hoping he can lose the weight.
All right, let's look at Cam Jurgens. I know that they talked about him playing guard, but there's a lot of thought that this is the heir apparent to Jason Kelce. Second round, number 51 overall. Did you like this spot? And where do you see him, this year and moving forward?
Yeah, he was. Another good thing here is Jordan Davis was always projected by NFL teams to go in the middle of the first round. Well, he went at 13. The Eagles had to trade up to get him. So Cam Jurgens was always going to be a second-round pick. He was taken at 19th in the round, 51 overall. They're going to cross-train him to guard, but everyone I've asked, they kind of scoff at it. But as we've always said, Jeff Stoutland, we trust. If he says he can do it, then he'll do it. But physically, remember, he had never played offensive line in his life until he got to Nebraska. He's a former tight end. We had outlined on our show, I guess it would be Friday night after the second round, that the issue with him is there's some things that he just is not seeing because he's new to the position. And the term we were given is sorting. Sorting is the traffic that comes at you and how you have to do it. It's just the more reps he gets and the coaching that he'll get is going to help him. But this was 100% all because of Jason Kelce. No one's expecting to be back next year. Now, if by a major surprise, if he's back in 2023, this is where this so-called cross-training could happen. But they are so overloaded on the interior of the offensive line, Mike, and versatility. I mean, this is a great thing to happen. That no one is deeper on the offensive line than the Eagles. It's remarkable how deep they are.
Yeah, and we'll get to an example of that coming up in just a little bit. Nakobe Dean, everybody's steal of the draft. I mean, you can't go to an outlet that is not calling Nakobe Dean the steal of the draft. Third round, 83rd overall. I heard a Georgia observer say it's the best football player he's seen down there in 20 years, but there were questions, and there was this injury thing. So what are you hearing about Dean and the whole situation of him going from a possible pick 15 area to third round?
Yeah, I don't think that would be accurate. The way it was explained to me, Mike, is that he was going to go late first, early second. From multiple GMs that I spoke to, that's where they had the player slotted, top 40 pick. Now, here's what happened. He was training for the combine, I think that's what it was, if I recall correctly. Someone explained this to me last weekend, someone in scouting. He had the pectoral injury during training, and he went to the pro day at Georgia in the middle of March, and he struggled. Footwork wasn't good. That hand usage wasn't great. He had pectoral strain, so much that it affected his ability to, how like in drills, they'll have you, even linebackers do it, they have to catch the football or backpedal and so forth. You've seen this at the combine. He just didn't look right. Now, if you add his injury history, which Jeff outlined for us on our Friday post show, his injury history is more extensive than but it's not anything serious. And as one personal source said to me, he's just beat up physically from all these nagging and minor injuries from a multiple year standpoint. So if you add this all up, he's not going in the first round. I still believe he should have gone the second. But the pectoral injury, which this is what I don't understand, Mike. Now, we'll see. Like the Eagles are saying that this weekend, coming weekend's minicamp, he's going to participate. Not that you're going to do a lot. There are no veterans in it.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, if he's going to be on the field and you see him running around and so forth, he's not limited in whatever they ask him to do. How could 31 teams get it wrong, and then the Eagles get it right is my problem.
Yeah, it felt like one of those things where it was like, why is everybody passing on this guy? What do we know
Right.
that? But Nakobe
That's what Harry
Dean,
Rose said, Mike. You heard his press conference.
Yeah.
After, I would agree with that.
I guess the question with him is, this is a guy who everybody thinks 3-down backer. What does that linebacker position look like all of a sudden? You have Edwards, you have Davion Taylor, they signed Kaiser White. Now you got Nakobe Dean in the room. I mean, it's definitely going to be – it's a much more athletic linebacking room than they had last year.
It's great. In fact, this is the best group they've had in a while, at least 3 years. Kaiser White is a really good football player, but Brandon Staley, the way it's explained to me, is the head coach of the Chargers wanted – and he calls their defense – he wanted bigger football players. Kaiser White is smaller. Remember, this guy's a former safety who's somewhere around 230. He's a little bit heavier than you think, maybe a little bit more than that, but he's smaller. Let's call it like it is. T.J. Edwards is the only thumper, but he's not. They played him on third downs before. He's really not good at that. My sense is an all nickel and dime. It'll be in dime if you play one linebacker. It'll probably be Dean. Now, again, if he's physically able, and he's a terrific blitzer. In nickel, and in 5-2, it's going to be no matter however they want to line their two linebackers up. It's going to be Dean and White if everybody's healthy. If they're in a heavy run, if they're in a run package against a team that wants to run the football, if they're like playing the Titans, you're probably going to see more of T.J. Edwards in there than you normally would. And here's the question. Now, I know he put up good tape when he was healthy, but he was barely healthy. Where's this put Davion Taylor? That I don't know.
Yep, I that was one of the big conversational points Jeff and I were talking about yesterday. Where does Taylor kind of fit in with this? And then Kyron Johnson, I guess, 6th-round pick, wasn't invited to the combine, but has some pretty explosive athletic traits as well. Would probably be a special teams guy.
Yeah, so he'll be a backup Sam linebacker if he makes the team. He's a 6th-round pick, so there are no guarantees. His pro day workout was tremendous. He had a good Senior Bowl week. In fact, the Senior Bowl tape was really good because he was asked to drop a little bit. He only played DM for 1 year at Kansas. He had 6.5 sacks last season. He's very athletic. He hits. This is somewhat of an analytics pick. The way it's explained to me, Mike, is typically from rounds 5 through 7, teams that are heavily into analytics, this is where analytics will take over a little bit. This definitely has something to do with analytics. I'm not saying that he's not intriguing. He is. But also, if he makes a team and he's active on game day, Mike, he'll definitely be on special teams. He's a very good special teams coverage guy.
Well, interestingly enough, they last year late in the draft they grabbed a bunch of edge guys, defensive end, linebacking types, and he's just seemingly another one of those guys that let's see if we can find someone who can get after the passer.
Yes, and it's funny because they had Patrick Johnson last year, who was a backup Sam, played earlier in the year than he seemingly wasn't really shown. Then Teron Jackson, number 75, you saw him play a little bit at defensive end, sporadically. He was a 6th rounder. Patrick Johnson was a 7th rounder. So they got some mileage out of those guys, but we'll see how they do it. Kyron Johnson's too small. He's just not big enough physically to play DN at this level, I don't think. But he'll be a good stand-up Sam. And look, here's the thing: we know it's coming. We know there are going to be some adjustments. We've called them for a couple months, some tweaks to the defense is what we had heard. Now that you've got, here's the interesting part. We didn't know up to a week ago. We had heard about a week ago. This is Jordan Davis, been from a guy that might have been on their list to we had heard you need to put him on the list, and he's going to be a major consideration at number 15 while they trade up to get him. So that tells you that they have a plan for him. Jonathan Gannon, the D coordinator, obviously has one for him.
The 6th-round pick, number 2, was Grant Calcaterra, who is an interesting athlete, man. They need that backup tight end. Can a 6th-round pick step in and be that guy? Does he have a role on this team?
Yeah, he's going to be what we call an F or move tight end. That's an offline. You'll see him. This is the F tight end is what the Patriots have used. The Patriots have used the F tight end forever. I hate to bring this up, but with Aaron Hernandez, we don't need to go into him. But when Gronk was there, Gronk would play inline sometimes, and Hernandez would be the F tight end, and they'd flex him out. So what you'll see, Calcaterra is kind of smaller. He's only 240 pounds. He's just over 6'3", but he could run. He's a seam tight end. I saw him at the Senior Bowl. He had a good combine workout. So if he makes it, Jack Stoll will only be a wide tight end in line. He'll be the main backup on run plays probably for Goddard, and then there'll be Stoll might be in, and Goddard will be the move tight end. They'll have a way to do this, but this is a really interesting pick. And let's not forget, Calcaterra, before he retired for a season, was a highly regarded tight end in college football, and then obviously he took a year off and went back. And he was a Senior Bowl guy, and I remember him wearing the horse on the SMU helmet. So that's how I could remember him, because when they said his name, I'm like, Grand Calcaterra, who is this guy? So I looked him up. I'm like, oh yeah, he was at the Senior Bowl. Okay, he was the seam guy. Seemed like every route was catch the ball over the middle, run down the field. And you know what? They don't have Goddard, as good as he is. He can't run. He's not as athletic as Calcaterra.
And then there's Rager and Dillard. Neither one moved. Yeah. Dillard's fifth year, not picked up. Rager scrubs his social media, doesn't want to be here anymore.
Well, here's the thing with Dillard. The Eagles kind of, if they ever trade him, the feeling around the league is they probably won a little bit too much. I'm not saying they won't ever trade him by training camp or the regular season or even the trade deadline this year. It was different than the Ertz situation. Ertz, they tried to trade during the draft last year, but the offers they got were so bad, I don't blame them for not waiting. They waited, and they got a fifth rounder and Tay Gowan, who they want to see because he's got good size and ability. They want to see if he can compete for one of the top backup outside corner jobs. We'll see. But with Rager, you know what's interesting? We're told there's still teams interested. We'll see about that. But the Eagles are not going to cut him. We reported that a couple weeks ago, and we know that they gave his representatives the ability to seek a trade, but that doesn't matter. It's going to be whether the GM, if he wants to trade him, and what he's willing to accept. That to me is in question. But I know this: teams, Mike, that did not fill their speed receiver role, have looked into this. So we'll see. I'm not guaranteeing anything. I'm not going to cut him. And if Mike, just let me finish off with Rager here. If they don't move him by training camp, it's because they just don't see anything that's worth it. But I just don't know how he's going to have a role in this team. That's to me, I don't see a role for him. Right?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what this new Dillard looks like. He beat up Brandon Brooks and took his body.
Yeah, we reported last week that we had heard they like him to take some snaps at guard. I don't know that he's a guard, but he's beefed up and he looks good. Good for him. So we'll see.
And we hinted at this earlier in the conversation, Adam. Caplan, Football at 4 from Inside the Birds podcast and InsideTheBirds.com. Nate Herbig was expendable. They're that deep on the line that a guy who started 17 games and graded out fairly well, they basically said, no room for you.
Yeah, so because here's the problem. His whole value at $2.4 million was to be the top backup interior lineman. Well, he would no longer be that because Jurgens is going to be the backup center for Kelsey. And they've got Jack. Another thing is we don't talk about this kid, number 76, Jack Anderson, very much. I know they really like him. And he could take that job. He's a backup center guard. And Seumalo's back from his injury. Jack Driscoll's back from his injury. Right now, they're 11 deep on the offensive line. There's just not any room for him. And not that they waived him, by the way. He's not terminated. He's still not vested. So he went through waivers today, I believe, and he will be eligible to be I think he's eligible to be claimed tomorrow.
I would imagine he's going to have some suitors.
Well, $2.4 million is a lot unless you think you better like him as much as the Eagles did.
Right.
Adam, nobody wanted to pay him off the RFA tender, so we'll have to see.
There's a lot of bad offensive lines out there that would say, a guy from the Eagles will take you.
Yeah, look, they do an unbelievable – someone said on our message board, the line factory. That is true.
There you go.
That's a great line. I'll give that – I don't forget the guy's name, but that was a good one.
Well, pass it along to Howie. Say, Howie, instead of quarterback factory, maybe you pump that one out and you'll get some people like you again.
Yeah.
Adam Caplan. We got a lot to talk about when he's back on Friday. I'm sure how are they going to find a safety, a corner? We got mini camp starting, all that. Football at 4. Andrew's here tomorrow. Jeff's on Thursday, and Adam's back on Friday Football at
Boom.
4 here on the Sports Bash. Check out the latest edition of the Intel drops tomorrow. Greg Cosell, 6 a.m. inside the Birds platform. All right, bud.
Thanks, man. See ya.
Adam Caplan, everybody, here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN.